people today. They could spend half their lives over 50. That's a lot of living. So it helps to have a wise friend and fierce defender in your corner. A friend like AARP. So your health lives longer.
This is just slow-mo karate?
Just slow-mo karate.
Your money lives longer.
I just bought that.
I just sold that.
And your happiness lives longer. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Join today.
Welcome to AARP Illinois' virtual event. It's so wonderful to have you with us. AARP is on a mission to connect with individuals across various communities, especially those aged 50 and above. We're here to listen, understand, and address the unique needs of you and your community as we age. Our goal is to enrich your experience by expanding our local activities, providing opportunities for you to discover and engage with all that life has to offer right here in your own community and virtually. As we journey through today's event, we invite you to consider joining our dedicated team of AARP volunteers. It's a chance to make a meaningful impact and help us better serve those 50 plus across the nation. Connect with us and be a part of this vibrant movement toward positive change. Welcome, and let's make this event both fun and transformative.
Well, good morning and welcome to AARP Illinois' special virtual event. I'm Teresa Jones, the Associate State Director, and I am here with Courtney Hedderman, our Senior Associate State Director of Advocacy and Outreach. We're your girls, the Fraud-Fighting Fraudlettes. We're thrilled to be bringing the latest on frauds and scams and ultimately arming you with the information that you're going to need for prevention and reporting if you're ever a victim. We're excited to bring this month's topic, everything you need to know about romance scams. I seem to be really excited, don't I? So, but we are excited. So we're honored to be joined by Tina Williams, who is the Outreach Service Manager of the White Oak Library District. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you.
But before we get started with our discussion, I'd like to remind our Facebook and YouTube viewers that you can ask questions and share your comments in the social media feeds. We will do our best to address as many of your questions as possible during the conversation. To kick things off, though, let's start with some questions. So, Tina, you're the expert in this area. Could you please share with our audience how you know all about this and what you've been doing to help others learn about romance scams?
Well, like I start every one of my presentations, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in any field, but I feel I'm very educated. Librarians are really well versed in knowing how to do research. So for the past 7 years, I've really been researching and giving out the information as best I can nationwide to any of the librarians who are trying to also show people like what they can do to safeguard themselves when they're on different online dating sites. And so since 2017, we really felt that our patrons were asking us more and more questions about, like, how do you go online and do this dating? What's it all about? How do you protect yourself? And, mostly excitement, but being afraid, right? And I said, that is the best two emotions that you can bring to the table when you're going to try to do this. So the best advice that I give them is always be yourself, but be cautious. Have your borders up, have those boundaries in place. Don't be too nice, but don't be too mean either, and that always, the basic thing is make sure you have enough technology savvy wisdom behind you so that you know what to do, that you know how to report, that you know like your escapes and your blockings and all of those things. And once you have that armor suit on you, then you can go and explore the field.
Okay.
Love it. Love it. So Tina, I thank you so much for being here, and already you're an expert as you're talking. Just saying, just saying. Okay. So a lot of people are thinking about going online though, and dating, and they are new, and you set this up perfectly, frankly. But like, let's just go right to the basics, because I think that people don't really understand that there can be scams or any fraud as it relates to them being online and looking for dating and looking for romance. So kind of what are those romance scams out there, and really why is it important to know about it?
So one of the other things that I explain to people is anytime you're online and you're chatting with people, they could be trying to make their way into a date or into a romance scam. You never know, right? You could be playing words with friends and having a chat, and people are trying to worm their way into your heart, right? So anytime you feel like, oh, all of a sudden you're feeling like they're really paying attention to me. If there's a quick like need to form that type of bond with you, if there's a lot of compliments coming at you, within 24 hours they're in love with you, they have a sob story to go with that as to why they're so lonely and they need somebody in their lives. There's always an element of those truths in there, right? So anytime you're feeling that, that, whether it's an online dating platform or not, anytime you're online chatting and you're feeling those immediate like connections happening, to the point where it's like unrealistic, that's when you're in a situation where you need to put that armor on and to make sure you're following your steps that we're going to talk about today.
So what do you think like the scams actually are? You know what I mean? Like, obviously someone's trying to pay attention to you, and they're, again, saying how much affection they have for someone. But
typically they're going, the scams specifically are in the end, they want money, whether it's physical money or the prepaid cards that you can get to them. They'll say, can you help me pay this bill? Or I want to help you pay bills. They're trying to get your bank information. They're trying to get credit card information from you. So they might try to steal your identity. If the more information they find out about you, your phone number, your email, all of the things that we use to authenticate ourselves online, those are all ways that they can scam in order to benefit financially.
Gotcha.
So you kind of alluded to that, but if you could go a little deeper. So what are some common signs that someone might be a romance scammer? Or is there a particular communication style of a potential scammer?
Absolutely. They'll have a fake photo, first of all. So if somebody looks really good to the point where, they can be a model or something. Typically that's an automatic red flag. So usually the fake photo is one of them. Typically, again, that sob story, they live alone. They live overseas. Very common. They work on oil tankers. I don't know why, but that's a very common thread. That the sob story is usually they're a single parent, or their children passed away and now they're raising their granddaughter or their grandson. There's always some element of like this extreme pressure that they're under, and they always have these big stories. But it's usually that story. The other thing is I like to throw out there like abbreviations for our state, for example. And the more I say this, the more I think, they're going to learn this from me. And so now it's not going to happen. But for example, if they say like, where are you from? And I put IL, like the scammers from overseas don't know what that means, but a local person would know that that's Illinois, correct? Little things that are very common to like the Chicago area, like try to throw those in and see if they know what that is. If they have no clue, then they're probably, maybe they're just not in our area. Maybe that's good enough information to not even speak with them further. But a lot of times things like that will indicate that you're probably dealing with a scammer.
Good tips.
It's good stuff, because I have a couple of friends that have gone online, and you're right. All of the guys, they work overseas. And I thought, dang, there must be something going on overseas. That's why we can't get a date in the States, because everybody's overseas. But the things that you said, I have found true. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I had done is I went on a lot of platforms when I first started getting these questions, because I didn't know anything about online dating. And the good or the bad of, at the time I was going through a divorce, and I was like, perfect opportunity for me to investigate. Right. So I went on as like 10 different sites that were noted for where I knew a lot of the older adults would be. And after a while, you see this pattern, and it becomes almost like a script. And I'm like, who's handing out the script overseas? And it's some of those things that you can do to ask questions that will indicate that that's what you're dealing with is the scammer.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. Thank you for this. This is really fascinating. Okay. So you kind of made reference to this a little bit, but I just thought it would go maybe a little bit deeper. As you're maybe talking to someone, how do you think you could identify if someone really is the real person, that this is a real person, and maybe even potentially a real connection? Like, how could you verify the identity of someone, that they're real? So
again, beyond the just really listening to the details.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we go online, especially for romance, we're always there, with our heart first. And what I always say is, think safety first, right? So really listen to the details, pay attention to what they're saying, because a lot of times it starts where it's not making sense, or they're not answering your questions, and they want to just talk about you, and which is nice in romance, but not good for safety, right? So that would be the first thing. If you're tech savvy, even a little bit, we can all Google, right? And I always use Google as a verb. So we can go Google any information that they are giving us and see if things are popping up. A lot of times you'll be like, if it is a recent scam, FBI is really good about putting out the information. So easy Googling, you can find out like, oh, look, all of this information, this is our recent scam going on. So, being able to just Google their details, if there's something out there, it'll pop up that this is something going on. If you're really tech savvy, again, Google is wonderful. They have Google Images now where you can actually scan the person's photo, and it'll pop up and tell you, like, does that information match up with that person? So if they've used a photo of somebody else's, especially if they've used the professional photos that you'll find in picture frames and that kind of thing, the models, it'll pop up at you a lot of times. So you have that information. The other thing in verifying is, in the long run, when you actually meet the person, and there's all kinds of safety protocols before you would do that. But, meeting the person, either live video or in person, is going to be your ultimate knowing for sure if this person is who they say they are. Making sure you're taking it slow and trusting your gut is part of that safety thing. But it depends on how tech savvy you are. But even if you're not tech savvy, just that gut and wisdom and that listening skills can really help out.
Can I ask a quick question here? So I've been noticing lately, now this is a personal thing. I've been noticing lately, I've been getting these Facebook inquiries, I guess, from, I don't know who these guys are, but anyway, it's like they're popping up, and you're like, wow, and I'm wondering how they're getting hold. And so I know if it's happening to me, it's happening to others. How are they getting that information? Or, are they just out there looking? Or because I don't think on my where you tell stuff about you, I don't think I put single or anything like that. As a matter of fact, on my Facebook page, picture me and my husband. But still, I've been getting these inquiries, like, hi, Teresa, how are you? And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And there is more and more of that too. It has nothing to do with you personally. right? It's just that they're out there just trying to attack as many accounts as they can. And so they'll just see who bites.
Okay.
So the best thing you could do is just block them. If you suspect it's a suspicious account, then you can report them. So, but they are just trying to go and see who bites. So they will do it to everybody and anybody.
Okay.
That makes sense. Okay, so you made reference to this already in the sense that a lot of times anybody, who is trying to get to know you, they ultimately want money. And so what should someone do if someone does ultimately ask them for money, or again, stealing their identity or potentially stealing their identity? What would somebody do?
So if they've asked you and you actually haven't proceeded, which is a good thing,
Right.
You would want to report what's going on. So the number one report that you would want to start with is whatever platform that you're on. So if you're on the dating site for Facebook, or you're on OkCupid, or whatever it is, they all have reporting features. So the first thing you would want to do is report through whatever platform you're on. If you become where you're part of that scam, that's a whole different story. But if you hadn't been actually scammed out of some money, and it's just the person starts inquiring about that, you would want to report that and then block them, so that you don't need to have any further communication with them.
That makes sense. So what happens if you do send money? Because let's just be honest. I don't want anyone out there who's listening, whether it's a romance scheme or not, they're somehow have been talked into sending money. And if in fact, obviously it was inappropriate, meaning that they were scammed and they've now become a victim, obviously they need to do more than just report through the site that they were maybe working with. So what do they do then?
Well, the first thing I want to say is something you said have really hit home, to the point where I was at a library conference last year, and I heard for the first time someone from AARP Fraud stand up, and they talked about how they have this whole division where people can call in and they can claim their fraud and they can report people and things. And the thing she said, and I literally stood up and clapped, because no one ever says this, like, people who are the ones who are providing, the information really need to hit home and say, you are a victim. If you did send money, like, yes, you feel bad, but you need to talk about it. You need to report it. And so many times what happens is people feel embarrassed. They're like, oh, how could I be so stupid? And it's like, you weren't stupid. It was not your fault. You are a victim. And so many times people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to report it because they feel like, oh my God, this was my fault. And that's not how it is at all. So thank you for saying that, because people need to realize, like, no, you need to report this. You weren't stupid. You did something you thought was a good thing, So to start with that, the other thing though is you need to immediately report to your banks and your credit card people and to the credit union, and report it to AARP Fraud, report it to the FBI, report it anywhere that you can think of that you need to be above and beyond that. But you start with those. You right away start with your personal things, your bank and your credit cards. Shut down your credit report, all of those things. And then, make sure that you're reporting it to the other sources.
Yep. Love it.
Yeah, I do too. That's good information. That's kind of some of the things I was going to ask you. I was like, so what steps do you take if you suspect that you're being scammed? But you already said, you let family know, you call your banks and all. That's great information. And thank you also for emphasizing the fact that you're not stupid. You shouldn't be shamed. Everything happens. Things happen to good people. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us, men and women, we're thinking, with that little thing inside your body, it's called a heart. And you feel like if you're a good person, nobody else is out there intentionally trying to hurt you. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. But saying all of that, so because we get a little, like you said, some of us are like, oh, I can't tell anyone. But so how do you involve your family and friends in your online dating experience to stay safe?
Yeah, because I don't think, Tina, too, I don't think that people, I think it's not that they're maybe shameful, but they just don't want to, they're nervous to share that like they've got a profile now on online dating. Like they might not want to share that. And then if they go in this direction and they're ultimately, scammed and they set money and like, it's a whole other thing then too.
Yeah.
So
it's like added to it, right?
Right.
So I always teach something called Safe Buddy. I said, when your children, if you have them, were teenagers, you made sure you knew where they were, who they were with, where they were going, what time they were going to be there, what time they're coming home, right?
Yes.
They made sure of all those things. Well, I'm sorry, in this world, you need to have a safe buddy who knows all of that detail. And that also means, okay, I'm going to go online. And what do you think of what I put on my profile? And what do you think of my pictures? You need someone you can trust, who's your safe buddy. And it might be your children. It may not be your children when you're older. It depends on your situation. Some older adults don't want their kids to know that they're online. However, if you come across and all of a sudden you're like, hey, there's my cousin, you're going to want people to know what you're doing, right? So,
yeah,
because I've had several of those where they're like, hey, I didn't know you were on there, and you start laughing about it. But you really do need to have somebody, at least one person that you trust, who you're talking to along the way. And that if you do become a victim, that, you can say, okay, now I did this, and what, I need support. You need support. You need help from people. So you want to have those steps in place before you even enter into that.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Wow. That's really great advice. Great advice. Okay. So, I think that maybe a lot of people who have not started a profile, maybe they're not on just yet, but they're interested in it. Can you talk a little bit about what they should think about, and maybe even, dare I say, some suggestion of sites that they should consider?
And what they shouldn't put on there.
Or what they shouldn't put on there. Yeah, right.
So, well, first of all, before you would consider going online, you need to question your tech skills. Like, are you able to navigate to find where to report people, how to get hold of customer service, those things? Because if the site you're on doesn't have good customer service and good reporting, I would not recommend those sites. And there's hundreds of these online platforms you can be on, but there's very few that they're well known, they've got good customer service, you can trust them with your credit card if you're going to put that on, because there's all these things that are out there that maybe are trustworthy or not trustworthy themselves for the companies. So are you tech savvy to even be on is really part of it. Making sure that strong passwords and what they're going to be. Creating perhaps an email account or a phone number that you would use just for that purpose. You can use Google Voice. You can use Google Video features to do all those things. You can, if you don't know how to attach a virtual phone and send it to your phone and all those tech things, you could have a burner phone kind of a situation. So that, because again, we're using our phone and our email as two-factor authentications. And you're using that in our online world. So you really don't want to attach any of your dating things with that.
Great
because
idea.
you want to protect your privacy. So those are all things you would want to consider. The photos that you're going to use, I always say, how do you want to present yourself? You don't think of am I going to look, sexy or presentable? It's that's all good. You want a nice, good photo of yourself. You don't want your grandkids in the photo with you. You don't want pictures in the background where they're going to show where you live and all those things. So there's a lot to figuring out your photos ahead of time before you even go online, knowing are you tech savvy before you go on, setting up accounts or phone numbers before you even venture in. So all those are all things you really need to think about before you even go on and create an account.
Yeah, I love it.
That's
All
good
great
stuff.
tips.
Yeah. I hope our listeners are really paying attention and getting some of this good advice that you're giving. And I'm gonna tell you something. I'm single, so I'm kind of taking all this in too. So it is a scary thing. I mean, especially reaching out there, and you don't have any idea who's going to be reaching back. So at least when you go fishing for catfish, you know that that's what you're fishing for. So out here you're just throwing in your line. You don't know what you're going to reel back. So
well, and at the end of my 2-hour class that I teach, so many people are like, oh, like now, like I feel like I shouldn't even be online. It's a scary thing. And it's like, well, it can be. But if you know all this, if you're knowledgeable in this and you have your armor on when you go in, then there are thousands and thousands of people who are making connections. So it is a way to do it. It's not the only way, but it is a way to make connections and to find people. But you need to be safe when you're going on and to have that knowledge behind you.
I love that. Because I think even too, I mean, I know we're talking about romance, but I think that people are just looking for connection, right? So, I mean, it could be just a new friend, not necessarily even a romantic friend, but just truly connection with people. And more people are at home. I mean, probably since COVID, right? At the dreaded words we don't like to speak anymore, but it's kind of true. People are more online and more virtual than ever. And so that's how they're making connections in this kind of different way than they certainly were, 10 years ago. So yeah, that's how would somebody are there places to go for people who are looking for, again, romance versus maybe looking for connection? Do you know what I mean? Like just looking for a friend to talk to, like should people go to individual chat type of rooms, maybe by issue or something, looking just to maybe get more information about anything, a topic? I don't know. Like, what do you think people are kind of looking to do in those areas?
So, like where you can find a companion? Is that what you're asking? So one of the most fun program we did at the library was like where else you can meet people other than online, because that was always a question, like, okay, I'm trying the online, but where can I meet that personal connection, right? So I always say, well, look and see like what clubs are out there, so library has wonderful clubs and programs. Your park districts do. Any kind of big events that are going on, you never know who you might bump into, right? Hey, you're at an AARP expo and you happen to, say, hey, I saw you in church or whatever it may be, I always love that one of the articles we read said, you could still bump into people in the grocery store in the fruit aisle, and you just never know. If you go to grocery stores, so many people are dressed up, and I was always like, why are they so dressed up? I'm like, oh, if they're there all the time, who else is there all the time? Okay, makes sense. There was always your McDonald's clicks, and you never know where you're going to meet somebody who you have common interest in. And that's the main thing. Meetup groups are popular because you're meeting people with common interests. So going places that you're really interested in, you're going to find people who are really interested in those. And you never know where you might find a connection with somebody. But we do like gaming nights, and we have Pinochle group and things like that at the library. And again, those are those common things, and people, have sprouted into having relationships, or even just finding a friendship where you can go other places with. So those are a little bit easier than going online, and they are available to people.
Yeah, I know there's a thing going on here coming up pretty soon, and it's a speed dating event. And so we're real excited about seeing how that goes. And that's just, we felt like, that's a safe environment for people to meet, well, you hope it is anyway. So, and that's, like you said, there's all different kinds of ways. But as a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, I keep hearing you, and which I already knew because Courtney had told me about how wonderful your program is at the library. I'm going to talk to some people at our library here and say, hey, there is this woman that is doing all these things at the White Oak Library, and maybe we can call her and talk to her and see how she got it started. So thank you so much, Tina, for doing this. This is so exciting.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
Thank you.
Look like you do.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tina Williams, the Outreach Services Manager of the White Oaks Library System. I cannot believe we're nearing our time. And just thank everybody for being here. Obviously, Tina, thank you for sharing your insights and your knowledge and expertise. We appreciate your time and valuable contributions you're continuing to make, not only to keep older adults and seniors safe, but really our whole community. So thank you so much. And to our audience, thank you for joining us for this enlightening conversation. Remember, the power to create positive change lies within each of us. So please join us next month for another engaging conversation regarding fraud. We're talking all about healthcare fraud. So lots to unpack on that for sure. Once again, thank you again all for joining us today. We look forward to continuing our mission of supporting older adults, caregivers, and the entire aging community in Illinois and across the country. For more information regarding fraud, you can call 1-877-908-3360. So that's 877-908-3360, or by visiting our website, aarp.org/fraud-watch network. So that's aarp.org/fraud-watch network. If you would like any more information on AARP's upcoming virtual events, you can visit us at aarp.org/Illinois. We hope that you have the most wonderful day. And this concludes our virtual event. Stay safe.